We are live. Rivers, how are you doing, man? I haven't seen you in forever. Literally forever.
Other than recovering from the plague, I'm perfectly fine.
And you were saying you didn't have the official COVID, but you had some shit that was just as bad, or well, anyway, just as bad.
Yeah, no, I very, very thankfully I didn't end up with COVID, but it has done some things to the community I live in, specifically Portland.
Oh, I can imagine, man. Yeah. And it's crazy. Which is the one, it's shit like this that reminds me why we play role-playing games, right? It's like escapism at its finest. So let's do that. Mm-hmm. So what this is it's like those, particularly like the 80s reality shows, but I guess others as well, like Survivor and whatever else. You always had those points in the season where they like pull one person into a room and just ask them questions. So this is the mid-season confessional focused on Oswald, who by far is one of the most interesting characters I think in a lot. So we're going to get inside of River's head, see what he's thinking about Oswald, as well as Oswald's head, and see what he's thinking about his predicament. Sound good to you?
Sounds perfect. Let's do it.
Awesome. So let's start out with this. So tell me, just give me the kind of quick high level about what's going on with Oswald. I mean, he obviously just at a high level, who is he and what's he really about? And then we'll get into how he's changed.
On high, just as a paragraph or less description, Oswald is not a failed engineering student, but he's a self-failed, where he was too good at his own studies for his own good, and this kind of bred some sort of like, I'm so bored with being in this room with all these sycophants. I want to go explore and apply the knowledge I already know. I've read this engineering book front to back. I couldn't stop when I picked it up.
So it's almost like he was a savant in some ways, right?
Yeah, I like to think that he is a somewhat savant, and maybe that's what, like, even though Oswald is a third-born son and wouldn't really hold a lot of land or anything like that, his father gave him the best education, the thing that could get him the farthest. Like, whereas one of his brothers is a knight, the other is like a bishop essentially in a church. He is like the one that is supposed to take up the family heirs because he had the talent to be that kind of merchanteer or like higher learning anyway.
Yeah.
And from that, he's very pragmatic and very kind of like, I'm set in my ways. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make sure I do it well.
So he winds up stuck in this predicament with these folks under the employ of Unter Wagner. He winds up stuck under this vault. So let's start there. So obviously there's a town of Feldweg and all these other concerns, but what was Oswald's feeling when he first realized that he was trapped under this dome?
So I like to think from River's perspective on Oswald. I like to think that he kind of thinks a bit like an octopus would. So like he tested all the things that he could physically get his hands on, whether it be with the fire or smoke or the way things, like, I imagine at this point it's been several days and like the stillness of the air is almost kind of eerie and like
stifling,
falling. Like snow, and like the dome's getting covered in like particulates and dust and stuff. But those initial early days, he was very much like, what can I poke and prod to get out of the shell? What's going to lead me to the exit? What can I twist to do this? What can I, see about it? And again, he is very curious. So I think that his first initial reaction is like, especially because he's, I think he views himself as the one who is pushing forward to find the exit more so than anyone else.
Yeah, like in his own head at least, right? Like he's on a mission, and the others are in some ways kind of following him, right? So so what was your thought when you got to Feldweg? So you get to this village. What the hell's going on? What's going on with the folks of Feldweg?
So I think Oswald, if he had to recall back to it, I think he would be like, this is the typical empire, but the rural side of the empire, the more superstitious side of the empire, the people who don't really know proper education and these are the backbone of the empire, who get downtrodden a lot. These are the people who provide all the food and all this stuff. Or maybe they're even forgotten. And his initial thought was, obviously there's something going wrong. Between the burning and the misshapenness and the creatures that they fought outside the inn and the guy who left mushrooms underneath him. It kind of all just, like, maybe it struck him to his faith. Like, there is something more here. And I need to see Unter through it because, one, that's what I'm paid for. But two, what if this is happening in Ubersreik? Like, it's maybe not something that he has spoken to the characters about. But his family is in Ubersreik, and if, like, this is a direct drive for him in a sense that, like, I can't do anything right at this current moment until I can get to them and protect them. From whatever this is.
So do you think it's connected? You mentioned, it was something that was interesting. You mentioned helping Unter see this through. Do you think that the dome situation is connected to Unter specifically?
Maybe it wasn't at first like an idling thought in Oswald's mind, but the closer he gets and the more dubious his own personal situation gets, that's the way I'm going to decorate that for the time being, the more he's starting to put the pieces together, like, that Unter might be involved, but he doesn't want to address it because he's just trying to get the people that he cares about and the caravan and Unter out of the dome so he can proceed.
So if this danger, if this situation is a monster of Unter's making, I mean, how would Oswald react to that? Would he be looking for vengeance against Unter? Like, what would he go beat up the fat kid? Like, how would that play out?
No, I don't think he holds it against him because I don't think he thinks that Unter is smart enough to do and orchestrate this himself. I think
okay, so you think he's more a victim, just like with the rest of you in some way.
I think he's more of a victim, and if anything, Oswald is spurned by that. Like, he's a little upset that whatever Unter got himself into got him into it, but he believes with an almost utter, like, drive that he is the one that is going to at least bridge the gap for them to find their exit. Yeah. Whether or not he can do it himself, that's a different thing, but he's
not going to stop. He's not going to stop. Yeah. Nice. So then, tell me about this situation that happened in the cabin in the woods, right? So you remember the sisters. You made a pact. What is Oswald? So I know Rivers, I'm sure you probably have some theories, but what does Oswald think that is all about? Because since then he's had these situations where he might have been hurt or wounded, and instead he sees these black veins appear and then fade away. Like, what does Oswald think?
I think Oswald very much has a fatalistic view on himself. I don't think that he doesn't think he's going to make it out of Feldwig. Feldwig. I don't think he's even going to, he comes to the point of he's getting away from the dome. I think he understands that he might have made a pact with something that has damned his soul, maybe. But at the cost of protecting those that can't protect themselves for the time being.
Yeah, and it's funny. There are two comments that I have on it. And the first is that to me is one of the most compelling moments so far is when at the wagon where you saw the corpses that were littered with this fungus, and you're like, you know what? I don't even care. It's over for me. Like, he's resigned himself to know that his fate is coming, and he's gonna just see this thing through at any cost. I really thought that was pretty awesome. So then how has this changed him? Because, we came in and Oswald was very confident, right? Very technical, kind of a thinking man, maybe a little rough around the edges because he's been traveling a bit, but how's he changed with all this nonsense?
I think if he wasn't driven before, I think he is kind of like Caesar was a driven man. Right, but Alexander the Great went beyond that, right?
A little bit,
with almost kind of a reckless abandon, and in fact, some would argue it would have gotten him killed, which it did. I would say that Oswald has changed from a personally driven man to a more resigned driven man, like an even more determined, like, I'll get you guys through it, but you know, I'm not going to be coming through the other side.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So you're pretty much sure that whatever this was has cost you your life, and that the kind of hours are limited, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I also think that like there's a reason why he got that flower. Like he's been carrying it around with him. I haven't told the other players, but I'm pretty sure it's on my character sheet somewhere. That flower, I forget what the name of it was. I have to go back and look at it. But Oswald would have remembered it.
Yep.
He keeps it with him at all times, and in his little toga as best he can.
Yeah, poor guy. Yeah. How has that gone? So this has been fun for me because, like, the circumstances, I mean, we've played to a level of realism that has just left you. Poor Oswald always just gets fucked over, like whether it's clothing or like. How's that as a I gotta say, you do a fantastic job of like just accepting circumstance and not trying to min max and just being grim, perilous, and naked if that was a situation. So like, how is that as a player?
I think again, this is more like if I was playing a more like a different character from whom I have like casted in my mind this person to be. If I was writing like a screenplay or something, I think he's one of those I wouldn't call him a leader. I'd call him a doer. Like he isn't just gonna wait around for people to do something. He might wait for the group to choose something, but he's fairly dead set on getting to the bottom of this and at all costs. Like all physical costs. If it can be avoided, other people costing it, he's willing to pay that burden for people so he can bridge that gap, I guess. To the end.
That makes sense, and and so as you head toward the catacombs, like, what do you think is waiting for you there?
Oh, most assuredly, like Oswald's thinking of a number of things that he maybe heard rumors about, and like, like what should we tell in wise tales? Oh, the boogeyman's gonna come and get you. Oh, someone's gonna snatch you in the middle of the night and steal you away, like a beast man or something.
Yeah.
Being a bad kid. I think Oswald has made the realization that the Elder is there. Whatever this is caused by, it's caused by the Elder. And these jars of stuff they've acquired is just the answer to the problem. Like, it's going to stop at least some of the disturbance enough to where we can get the group moving out of the dome. It may be that the dome comes back up, but I do believe that there's something foul waiting for us at the catacombs, and only Sigmar's flame will help guide us through this.
And how do you think? So you mentioned, Rivers, that your brother is clergy, so he's in the Church of Sigmar, I would guess. So does this somehow, in Oswald's mind, does this sort of kind of validate some things that his brother might have told him that he might not have believed otherwise? Do you know what I mean? Like, talking about the sort of chaos. I think
Oswald's brother is sort of like warrior priest of Sigmar, where he campaigns. He goes for a local count, and he probably does reflect on that. Like, hey, my brother probably warned me about this, and I just was too naive to think it was true, or too smart for my own good to believe in the things that are actually real.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a factual man. I'm a numbers man. I'm a intelligent man. But intelligence only gets you so far, and there is reason in superstition.
No, for sure.
I think that's now his like superstition in his mind, where previously he would have been like, superstition is for sillies, like religion is really for sillies. But the more that it goes on, he sort of has been like, no, there's a real good reason for this.
You're like, the ruinous powers are real. That sucks.
Yeah. And maybe it's sort of like, how that book that he has that he doesn't like, he told Bartleby to, like, if I'm staring at this book, crack my head open.
Oh, right.
I believe that. Yeah. I think Oswald knows that book has something to do with the crypt, and that's how they're going to get into the crypt. At least he's pieced together, like, this does something with the crypt.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into the crypt using this. Whatever knowledge is on this book, I'm the one who can read it. I'm the one who can understand it. I'm the one who's going to look at this and peer it in its horrendous eye and understand what's there, so I can get the others through it. And that, a part of that is the superstition route. Like, and maybe it's because of the, I guess, the third eye, if you will, that his brother, the lens that his brother would have given it to him, because his brother in the faith would have been the oldest. Yeah, would have been the oldest from what I wrote. And so I think that is sort of the thing that, like, it's because of his sort of like musings on the superstition and trying to win Oswald over has really kind of sold that to him.
Yeah, I could see that.
Aided him really, kept him grounded, because you don't stare into demon books too long before you start becoming a demon yourself. So,
yeah, exactly. So let's just muse for a second. So assuming that you were to make it out of the situation, and let's say that on the other side of whatever waits in the crypt, you're able to sort this out, and the dome goes down. How scarred is Oswald? Like, what does life look like when he returns to Ubersreik and it's like a Wednesday or something, right? Like, how much is this going to follow him?
Well, I think his life goals have changed. Like, previously, his life goals were probably, make some money, make my own money in my own right. I even think that's my long-term goal, is to prove myself as a merchantman or something like that. I really do think that has changed, in the sense that I think Oswald might be more of like willing to do things that aren't the norm, like adventure.
Yeah.
Look for things that are in the world that are fantastical, I should say. Like, he wants to be the one that has the knowledge to deal with stuff like this.
I like that. So yeah, it's almost like you're scratching the surface. It's like the first time I went surfing, right? I was horrible at it, and I banged myself all up, but I was out there the very next weekend. That sort of thing. It's like, hey, I've scratched the surface on something that's really deep that I need to explore. Is he gonna? Do you foresee him trying to recruit his companions to join him on that?
I think Oswald values that sort of camaraderie that he's built with them. I think personally, Oswald has, maybe he's on the vestiges of being one or two things. He either goes like in a more spiritual direction with it, like using his connection to the ghosts to kind of like bridge himself into like the magic world to kind of get himself a group together, or he's going about it in the sense that I'm the problem solver. I'm gonna go down this sort of like witch huntery path,
right?
And he's been leading more towards the witch huntery path, in the sense that he wants these people to survive so hard that he's willing to sacrifice everything to get them through it with him.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think mostly yes. I think he's going to try and convince them, like, we're good working together. We can go and solve the old world's problems.
Yeah, I love the sense of brotherhood there. I think it's important because, anytime people are put together, I mean, right, you're in the service, like anytime you get a group of people together and they, go through a hard sort of adversities, you come out of that feeling like brothers. You feel like you've got a bond. Mm-hmm. So I think that's super important. Speaking of brothers, let's talk about the guys. So you've got, let's start with little old Corbin. How have Oswald's thoughts about each of the guys changed? And let's start with Corbin.
So Corbin is a bit of a, because I have actually two bonds with Corbin.
Yep.
It's the one, he knows about my, wired up choppers.
Yeah.
He knows about like, or he's my, I think like how he's my one up man. Like
he's your one up man.
Things.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think where before Oswald's like, yeah, you're like a fun drinking guy. You kind of make light of the situation. You're a bit jovial. To whereas like I think Oswald looks at him as like a little brother almost. not in a bad way.
No, I get it. Yeah, like you sort of he's a companion, and the two of you faced in all these things. You look out for him, and you think you could sort of teach him things. I don't know if he's older than you. He might be.
He might be. Yeah, because Oswald's really young. Like I think Oswald next to
Grimwald.
Oh God, Grimwald is the youngest.
Yeah. Okay. So the halfling's older than you.
Yeah, and I think of it like I think Oswald, and this is going to probably come up a lot. I think he looks at himself as a sort of mentor or older brother figure to pretty much everyone, because he views himself as the one who's pushing the boundary to the next objective, pushing the next step forward, regardless if it's a hard step or not. And maybe that's just his abrasive, like, you know, I need to do this now kind of personality. And but for Corbin specifically, I think it's more that, you know, like, hey, I'll protect you. And maybe that was his viewpoint up until that last scene with the bed crab, where basically Corbin saved my life. I kind of want to say.
He did. He pretty much did. I'd have to say, yeah. You don't want to say that out loud.
I did set the thing on fire, which was the cool thing. That's the second time I've used some random object to bash somebody's skull in.
Yes.
But I think there's a sort of like, you get it now, like from him, like, or from Oswald to Corbin, like, you get it now. You understand that, hey, like, this is a very serious thing, and if we're gonna make it out, you need to help too.
Yeah, what I like about the way Eric's played him is he was an artist who liked to cook here and there, right? And you know, for the first many encounters, he would hide, he would lurk, he would kind of do things from behind. But this last couple, so like his dearest of friends, at least in this situation, like, you know, outside of his homeland, is in peril. So he was the only one that climbed up to your aid. He was the only one in the building with you too, to be fair. But but then this last thing where he comes out up in the rears and starts flinging sling stones, I was like, all right, you know. And I'm anxious to see where that goes. What about Grimwald? How do you think Grimwald has kind of evolved?
So Oswald maybe has the least to do with Grimwald, at least from a grand perspective, whereas he's the messenger, correct?
No, Grimwald is the servant, is James's character.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Gershwin is Gershwin's the messenger.
Yeah, so Grimwald's a tough one because I don't think he's like really kind of connected with him in any sort of way.
Yeah.
I know that he's maybe spoke to him a bit, but as far as I think he thinks Grimwald can at least control and protect himself enough to where he doesn't need guidance of Oswald to the same level that someone else might. Like,
have some of his successes surprised you? Because he's really young, and I have to think so. Like, we laugh at the critical roles when he just keeps flinging those things through, but like, what is that like for Oswald to see this kid, basically, because I think he's like 18, 19 years old, just hauling ass into battle with a shovel or whatever he had and just start lopping these things and chopping them up to bits? Like,
I think Oswald analytically has went, like, I don't need to watch out for him because he's obviously like a star to be the warrior that, like, in his mind, he's like, that's the guy that's going to be like have a song about him.
Yeah. Grimwald, the servant. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's the guy that's going to be, songs are going to be about him. You know what I mean? Like, because like he's just naturally proficient. He's young. He's vibrant. He's got everything that maybe Oswald wish he had, but Oswald realizes he doesn't need.
Yeah.
Like, Oswald is a very different creature than Grimwald. Very much so in his own eyes. Like, they're two different spectrums, and especially since
just their life backgrounds alone, right? Because, you know, Grimwald was a servant, and you would have had probably 30 Grimwalds in your house growing up, you know? Yeah. And
I think it's one of those things that, like, he knows Grimwald's going to do well for himself, and out of everyone, and maybe Bartleby, he thinks that Grimwald is going to be the one that lives through it all.
Yeah, that would be something, right? He lives through it all, and the rest of you guys are poor guys are dead. So, Bartleby. So you mentioned Bartleby. So same question for Bartleby. Like, how do you think Bartleby's kind of evolved, and what are your thoughts on the old stevedore?
So maybe this is probably the closest relationship that Oswald's portrayed, um, or has felt like has went anywhere. Uh, he's probably closer to Bartleby than anyone, especially given his bond of, hey, I can do things better if you're by my side.
Yeah.
I can make things better when you're there to help me and run me through the practical stuff while I elicit the more like esoteric thought processes that get us to innovation.
Do you think in some ways he looks at Bartleby almost, I mean, he probably would never admit it, but it's like subtly, does he kind of look at Bartleby as almost like a father figure, like an older brother? Or something?
I would say so. That's definitely something that maybe subconsciously crosses his mind, but I don't think he would bring it up in casual conversation.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Bartleby would probably punch him in the face if he did.
Yeah, but it's more along the lines of, on the surface level, like initially it was like, oh hey, like you understand what I'm saying because you've been in the life a long time. You just have all this wealth of practical knowledge, and now I think Oswald thinks that he's part of the glue that holds everybody together. Like he's the reason why a lot of people kind of stick together. Without it, we might have just not done anything.
You talking about Bartleby or you?
Bartleby.
Yeah.
He's the voice of reason when we need it to be. He's the one that sticks us, like, where I might be the super, like, hey, let's go do this now. And Corbin's like, no, we should probably stay back and be a little bit more reserved. Bartleby is the one that kind of like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's work through this with his like breadth of life experience. And Oswald thinks the world of him for that, because Oswald doesn't really have that skill set. He doesn't have that sort of, I can't not be like, when I need to get something done, I need to do it.
Yeah, I love with Bartleby, it's almost silences acceptance in some ways, and he's kind of back with his arms crossed, just sort of staring everyone down and throwing out the one-liners. I love that. So
the grounding force to what is the the group, if you will.
And plus, he has Nana's wisdom, which is always
Nana's wisdom. You can never go without that.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about the messenger. So Geschwin. So he obviously, he is kind of a city guy like you. Probably came from decent upbringing, reasonably noble profession for the most part. Particularly if he's delivering messages in and out of courts or something like that. But what are your thoughts on him, and how do you think he's changed?
So I think Geschwin has matured very quickly, and part of this is due to the grotesqueries that he's had to face.
Corbin, whether it be shovel, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like, whereas like we might hear stories of Gotrek and Felix, maybe.
Yep.
But
in some ways, like Felix, I agree with you. I do agree with you. Yeah.
He is very much kind of like the attendant to Gotrek, which is fucking. Who do you think Gotrek is in the story? The guy who can just crit everything.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. But yeah, I very much kind of like Oswald's that kind of lore. Like he likes the fanciful stories that dwarves might talk about or like whatever. And so like in his mind, he's like, okay, so Geschwin is definitely the runner-up and the helper to the actual hero of the story.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's pinned all the roles in his head, where Oswald's the one who pushes the heroes in the direction they need to go, and makes the call to save everyone. But they're the ones that actually do it.
Yeah. It's so. Do you think you think maybe Oswald might look up to Geschwin partially because of all of his travels, right? Because Geschwin's traveled all over, at least around the Reichwald anyway. Do you think, because Oswald probably would have been more or less stuck in the city, right? He traveled to the summer home or something like that. But what are your thoughts on him from a career standpoint?
I think he will. He is what, like, his worldly knowledge is something that Oswald aspires to, especially now, because I view as like if we're the ones setting up camp and going through this last area that we were at, I think Geschwin is the one who's like more mindful of the situation when it comes to like where people are going to sleep, what's going on, and that's sort of like real life knowledge has really kind of like impressionized Oswald to the point like, oh hey, he's more than just some messenger. He's someone who's sticking in the mud with me and has grown on me a bit, like like the fungus all around.
Yeah, awesome. So I got two more questions. Well, I think two more lines of discussion, and one of them is yeah. So what do you think the most epic scene was, like in your head, in River's head, the cinematic scenes that we put together? Which one sticks with you to this day as just the best so far?
Man, there's so many good ones. I think from like a cinematic point of view, not a like. Do you want like cinematic point of view or sort of like?
Either way, let's go with what sticks with you. Like when you're kind of. I think about our game in the supermarket and when I'm at work or whatever, and I'll stop and kind of reflect on a scene that's happened and just be, wow, that was awesome. Like, what's your favorite?
I think I personally believe that, and it may be a bit mundane. It's the scene where we woke up after the shed or the cabin in the woods from the sisters or the
yes, Genna and what was her name? I forget. Yes.
I think that one is probably the more like where all the characters kind of got to speak, and Savin was there, I think. And that kind of moment where it's not super actiony. It's not like we were fighting the bull. That one's super iconic. I think about that all the time. One that I think about, like if you would have like the closed like black brackets that like separate, and you just get that like that zoom in cinematic where like the camera's spinning and everyone's talking slowly. I think that's more along the lines of like where people started to realize, hey, this isn't just like just a little bitty journey. This is something that might kill us all.
Yeah.
To get accomplished. And but like and we made that choice then as like a group of people, like we're doing this, we're gonna go there, we're gonna get this done. And I think that's one of the most striking, because that's when peasants, regular everyday people, take it upon themselves to be giants.
Yes, and that's exactly what has happened here. I think what I like a lot about the way that we've done this, is particularly by keeping the timeline very close, because like you said earlier, it's only been like 6-7 days maybe. So it's not like you've got giant two-handed swords that are shooting fire everywhere. You're fighting with shovels and some, a couple of you have some decent, kind of regular melee weapons.
I think most of us have like either regular weapons or the equivalent of now. And even then, like we don't have armor. We have one shirt that's kind of rusted and came off a dead fungus humanoid. Like,
that's true.
Like I think again that moment, like right after, like you can even include the blanket, like creepy cabin scene, like where we went in and did all the stuff. But like specifically when we woke up, we were all covered in slime, and we just kind of like rose up and we're talking to each other. And that one's the most like, okay, we're not just going to sit here and let this rot take us over. We're going to be the ones that get sung about. Like, maybe that's not what we were thinking, like internally, but we were like,
but that's the way it came across. It was like that pivotal moment, right? That fight or flight response. Awesome. Yeah. So the last question, and probably the most important question, is: are you having fun? Are you sticking around for a couple more seasons of Tides of Nurgle as this thing continues?
Hell yeah! What are you talking about?
That's
I absolutely love it. Like as I expressed to you before, like role playing is my bread and butter. I love this. It's a hobby that I don't think will ever go away. I picked it up when I was young. I started playing when I was 4, and I'm having a fucking blast. I only wish I could participate in Cult, because that game is dark and broody.
Well, you know what? We do have a casting call out for Savage Worlds Western thing.
See, I'm running a Blades Western game right now.
Oh, how's that going? Is it going good?
So Wild Wild West.
Yes.
Smith, right?
Yeah.
They just finished a mission where they're at war with a different gang, and this other gang brought in like this group of people called the Boilers, and they have these like giant boilers on their backs that have like different types of steam weapons.
Yeah.
And that's why they're called the Boilers.
Right.
But they're at war with these people called the Rippers, and they have a ally who provided them with a spider tank
Oh shit, that's cool.
A spider tank. Imagine
big old
like
steam, wood and brass and steel.
Yeah, and so they have these like really long-legged spider thing that they ambushed this gang they were at war with, and it was just a recent mission of like just Wild West shootout. Like the one character has a Gatling gun that he built, like an old Civil War Gatling gun where he like cranks it and fires it. Oh, I loved it, every second of it.
So, by the way, those of you who catch this, so Rivers is actually going to be running some games here on the channel, which is really cool. So we're gonna get him hooked up on that here shortly. And also, so we may talk about Cult actually, because they're reaching a milestone. We're playing this Tuesday. They've reached a milestone in the storyline where it might be sensible to bring someone in. So let's keep that idea open. That'd be pretty badass. All right, so I think it's I guess the last thing is, what do you have to say to your fellow Myth Brigadians? So James and Eric and Jim and John, what do you want? What message do you want to give them?
Oh, hey, I love playing with you guys. I wish we could do it more. You know what I mean?
I think we should play 5 times a week. That's my
yeah, I know, right? Just quit our day jobs.
Dude, that'd be awesome.
We don't need to anymore. We don't need a day job. COVID happened.
Yeah, just keep those subscribes up, and we might be able to actually, cover the merch costs, right?
Yeah. So I say that, hey, just I enjoy being in a game where it's not about like what we get, like how much time we get or how much whatever. I honestly think that these people that you've kind of congregated have very much the kind of role-playing spirit, have the mentality that they are characters, and they make the world that much more believable and that much more enjoyable for myself.
I agree 100%. And you as well, because absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
And I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm not here to play I throw dice at the screen. It's not my job. Like, I like to pretend that to get away from it all, as we were talking about earlier. Escapism in some light. So I just want to tell them, hey, thanks so much for being acceptable to play with. You
yes, nice. Awesome. Rivers, thank you so much for playing, man, and thank you for all you do to bring Oswald to life. And there's going to be more. I hope you guys all survive, because there's more to this story than you know. And we have a lot of other games out there and stories to tell. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my mind beams to end this